Good morning, everyone, and welcome. It's the end of January, January 29th. Is that right? No, it's January 30th. See, I've already lost a day. I don't know where all of you are tuning in from, but here in Stouffville, it is quite frosty outside. So I'm happy to be inside. And I am bringing you today a technique using Distress Oxides as watercolor. If you have Distress ink only, not the oxide, the technique should work as well. But don't worry if you only have one and not the other. And we'll just play with this a little bit. I'm going to show you a couple of different things with this. I do have two little pieces of watercolor paper here because I think if we're doing one, we might as well do two and have them ready. And that gives us a chance to play a little bit and try a couple of different things. I apologize for the reflection over here. I'll do my best to try and keep focus away from that reflection. As always, if you have questions, please feel free to unmute your microphone and ask your question. But in the meantime, please do mute your microphone so we can keep things, the background noise at a minimum. If you're watching on replay, feel free to pause and rewind and all that good stuff as you need. So today we're going to do some watercoloring with our Distress Oxides. And we're just going to do some really simple techniques, but it'll allow us to play with some really bright colors. What size is the watercolor paper? I have cut mine right now at 5 by 6, knowing that I'm going to trim it down. I'll show you why in a second. You do want it a little bit wider because we're going to tape it down. And this way we give us a little play to trim and modify as we need. So hopefully that answers that question. And like I said, I've got two pieces. Now, again, you can use whatever size you have. If you have something that's a little bit smaller or a little bit bigger, we are trimming it down. So don't worry at all about size. You can make it work for whatever you are doing. I'm going to open up the chat here and just see if there are any other questions. Why is that? There we go. It's just everyone else saying good morning. So good morning, everyone. Yeah, so we're just going to play with some bright colors to help blow away the January blues, and possibly you can turn these into cards that you can send to someone to brighten their day. Now, as far as watercoloring in general goes, I will not profess to be a expert in any way, shape, or form. So some of this stuff may work out, some of it may not, but I think we'll all just have fun playing together. Please make sure you do have 2 containers of water, one that we'll use quite frequently as we're changing colors and whatnot. And then for one of the techniques, we do need some nice clean water, so you can just keep that aside. And please keep it safe and distant from your coffee, your tea, or whatever beverage you're drinking this morning as well, because we don't want to mix that up. Watercolor paper comes in various different brands and sizes and thicknesses and everything else. With this technique, I think it's pretty forgiving that you can use whatever watercolor paper or mixed media paper you may have. I could not find my regular paper, so I found a thinner paper, but I tested it this morning and I think we should be good to go. Lastly, the other thing you should have handy, which I may not have mentioned, is just some paper towel. That way we can blot and clean up messes as we need to. All right, excuse me. And again, I apologize. I've got a bit of a frog in my throat this morning, so I will try my best to be as clear as possible. But if I'm not, then please just ask me to repeat. I'm happy to do so. All right. Okie dokie, so we are going to get started. So with watercolor paper, because we're going to be adding water to this, even the best watercolor paper may have a tendency to buckle. So what I'm going to do is I am just going to tape my paper down to the surface so that as it dries, it has a better chance of maintaining its shape. So I've just got purple tape. You can use painter's tape, you can use washi tape, you can use anything you have handy. And again, this is why I like to cut my paper a little bit bigger than what I would need, so that if that tape happens to stick and tear my paper, I'm not too fussed about it. So I'm just going to tape it around on all 4 sides. Looks like I can't even get a straight line with a grid, but that's okay. We're just going with the flow today. And the phones are already ringing, which means it's going to be an awesome busy day. So there's one piece taped down, and I'm going to tape my other piece down right beside it. If you only want to work on one, that's no problem. Like I said, I just happen to have these 2 pieces cut and figure we'll try a couple different things on the different papers. All right, so my paper is all taped down. And we're ready to rock. So the colors I've chosen today, because I wanted something really nice and bright, I've got mustard seed, picked raspberry, which is probably one of my most favorite oxide colors, and seedless preserves. Now I say that's one of my most favorite colors, but there is a new color being revealed on Monday. So who knows, that may, depending on what color that is, that may take first place. We'll have to wait and see. So what I'm going to do with these 3 colors is over here on my little palette area. And if you're working on a craft mat, you can just do it off to the side. Or if you happen to have a little piece of acetate or even a paint palette, you can do it there as well. I'm simply going to take my lid off and I'm going to twist out some ink here on my palette, so to speak. I'm going to do that for all 3 colors. Let me see if I can slide the mat over a bit so you can see that a bit better. There we go. I've done pink, I've done purple, and let's do the yellow way up here. Sorry for the shake. Sorry, guys. So that's a great way to just quickly apply your ink out. That way you're not messing up your ink pads at all. And it gives you a nice little surface. You can always go back and add it. And again, this is where our paper towel is going to come into play. Now, when I was learning about this technique, the person teaching actually just went straight onto dry watercolor paper. I prefer to just give it a little bit of spritz with a mister just to get some water playing on there. Or if you don't have a mister handy, just give a light wash of water to your paper with your brush. And like I said, I'm not an expert in watercolor, so I unfortunately can't tell you much about brushes and what you need. For what we're doing today, again, kind of anything goes. And you can see how the water's starting to play on here. I might just give it a little bit more here. Then all I'm going to do is take my brush. Let me bring this over. I'm going to take my brush, dip it in the water, and I'm going to start mixing it with one of my inks over here and just start kind of dropping it in an area on my card. You can see how this one's a little bit wetter. Look at how much more that ink is playing. And if you feel like you need a little bit more water, you can bring that in. And I'm just doing a dabbing motion. If you do more of a brush motion, it gives you a different look. But I'm just going for something really loose and fun. Now I'm going to go into my picked raspberry and I'm going to start building up another area. Those colors are pretty close together. In hindsight, maybe I should have picked a different purple or a different pink, but I'm okay. We can still make this work. And you do want your areas to touch and overlap. And now I'm going to go into my mustard seed and add some areas down here. And you can see when the colors start blending, we get some oranges happening. And that's all part of fun. Oh, and sometimes you get drips and drops. Watercolor is all about going with the flow. I don't know if you can see it very well here. I don't want to tip it. I've still got some hard edges from where the pink or the purple was starting to dry. So I can just go in with a little bit of water and soften that up a little bit. Let's bring in some more yellow because that's getting really orangey now. And this is where we really just play. So stepping back and looking at this, my pink and my purple are really kind of blending together, maybe a little bit too much for my liking. So luckily I have my purples here with me. If you don't like your color combinations, you can keep adding colors. You just want to make sure you're not adding too much water because it could get a little bit too wishy-washy. So I'm going to switch up to Dusty Concord. That's a bit more purple. And just see if I can darken up. Oh, that still had some yellow in it. Ugh. Nope, that's not working at all. That looks too gray now. Okay, so I'm going to stop. And this watercolor is just so much fun to play. What if I switch to Wilted File? That's why we're doing two as well, because sometimes things don't work the way you want it to. My friend Nina, whenever she makes a mistake on a video, she calls it Nina's no-nos. And we've decided that when I make a mistake, it's going to be Sheri's screw-ups. But it's also just part of the creative process. So let me see, can I bring it? Oh, that works a little bit better. Just to bring in some difference of color. I'm going to leave this one alone. And because I have that yellow drop up on this one, that was a no-no. I'm going to see if I can recreate some drops. To make it look like it's on purpose. All right, so we now have our two watercolor creations. And I'm going to move my water because what I can do, you can see how this one's pooling a little bit down here. And oops, that was my clean water. You can also move, and this is where you have to kind of move your whole surface. But I can move this around and make those drips go in different places. Now, when you get it the way you like it, if it's still a little bit wet, this is where your heat gun is going to come into play, that you can just quickly heat this so that it dries and starts to even out, and all these little pooling areas start to dry out. And we do want it to be dry for the next step in the technique that we're going to do. I want to get this one moved back. Okay. So I'm just going to hit this with my heat gun. I apologize if it's loud. And just keep moving your heat gun. If you've got some really big puddles, you can take your paper towel and just kind of suck the water out of it without changing it too much. When you're using that heat gun, you do want to kind of move it in a circular fashion so that you don't overheat certain areas and you don't get, you know, like a burning smell, which can be kind of yucky. All right. The beauty of watercolor is it's such an imperfect look that anything goes. And even if you think you've made a boo-boo, nobody else is going to know. All right, I think I'm pretty good here. One way you can tell if your water, well, obviously, if it's still pools of water, you know that you still have a little bit more sponging or heat setting to do. But the other way you can tell if your paper is dry or if it's wet, it is cooler to the touch. So this one is still a little bit wet. This one feels not too bad. Let's give it one more quick pass. There we go. Yeah, that's better. So the next step is I am not going to stamp my sentiment, but I'm going to start planning where it's going to go. I have the word today. I have one of the photoplay Say It With Stamps stamp sets that has all of these great little sentiments. So I'm going to do something like let's have coffee today, or today is your day to shine, something like that. But today is kind of that main word that I want to use. So I'm going to kind of eyeball it and think that right down here in the bottom right-hand corner is where I'm going to want it. Remembering, of course, that we're also going to be trimming things down. And the same thing over here. I think I like that. Maybe. Okay, just to be different, I'm going to do this one in the bottom right, and this one I'm going to do in the top right. Unless, of course, I forget. So the next thing we're going to do, and one of the great things about Distress Oxide as well as the Distress inks, is that when you reapply water, you can pull the color out. Excuse me, and this is where we needed the clean water, and you may wish to have a clean piece of paper towel handy. Doesn't have to be big, but just a little scrap that you can have handy. And this time I've got a really narrow, oh, sorry, I didn't focus very well, a really narrow little brush. If you're still using your big brush, that's no problem. Just make sure you don't get too much water, and make sure it's clean after doing our watercolor technique here. So I'm thinking of this as a friendship kind of card. So I'm going to build some hearts that have no color. And how I'm going to do that is I'm going to get my brush wet. And then I'm going to start with this one over here just because I know it's a little bit drier. I'm going to just start doing simple little heart shapes, almost like a V. And this is where these inks will start reacting with the water. You can probably see it on your own surface better than you can see it on mine. But you can see how right where that heart is, it's starting to change the color. And then I can just go in with that little piece of paper towel and pull the extra water out. So you get these really subtle little hearts. And if it's still not enough for you, you can go back in and add some more water. You do want to let it sit and react for a few minutes. You don't want to just put water down and then dab it away. It doesn't give it a chance to do its thing. And these are going to be really subtle. But there, I don't, again, probably not great on the camera, but it's starting to pull away. So I'm just going to build these little hearts, keeping this area where I was going to put the sentiment clear. We don't need hearts where our sentiment is going to be. Go back and pull the color out. So like I said, you do want to leave it to react, but you don't want to leave it so long that it dries. I'm going to go over this one again. And this is where using darker colors so that you get that contrast might have been better than the lighter colors. But it's just meant to be a subtle So my water's clear. Let me see if I can lift that up and show you closer. See how those hearts are starting to come out. I'm going to move on to my second one, see if we can get some. I'm going to switch over. I've got a flat brush here. I'm wondering if maybe I'm not getting enough water in that teeny tiny one. So let's see what a big one does. And I wanted to put my sentiment up here this time. So I'm just going to do, oh, that's working a little bit better. And then dab. And try again. Let that water sit and react for a minute. Now, if you wanted to, if you were using, say, dark blues and purples, you could, try and draw little stars or little asterisks if you wanted to do more of a, like a night sky. It doesn't have to be hearts. That's just kind of the theme that I'm trying for today. Oh, there we go. Sometimes the challenge is remembering where you put the hearts. Just got to look for the water. There we go. Let's see if I can build. And that's why you want the clean water, because you don't want to bring any of the dirty water in here where we're working. Let's see if I can get one more down here. And patience is a virtue, so sometimes it is hard to wait for it to react. Okay, so I've got some subtle hearts because I'm too impatient. I've got some more dramatic hearts, and we've got that background happening. So while I'm still taped down, I am going to stamp my sentiment. Actually, maybe we should take them up and cut them first. Let's do that. So as long as all your little drips and drops are dry, we're going to peel up our tape. Keep it in case you want to, if you're going to continue working today, you can just keep that tape and reuse it. I don't tend to keep tape, if it's a couple of days in between projects, but if I'm going to keep going with this stuff, wish that I could, then I wouldn't throw this out just yet. It's still quite usable. And hey, if you're really crafty and really frugal, you could always put this on a piece of parchment paper or wax paper and tack it up somewhere so that you can save it for another time. Okay, there are my pieces of watercolor. I'm now going to trim these down to 4 by 5 1/4 because I do want a little bit of a border around when I put them on my card bases. So right now they are 5 by 6, so I need to take 1 inch off either side. Only because, excuse me, I know me. I'm going to quickly clean this up first, or excuse me, or I will be putting my finished artwork in there. So all I did was spray and then wipe with a paper towel. All right, back to cutting. So I want to do 4 by 5 1/4. So I'm going to take this down 1 inch. Sorry, 1/2 inch on either side. So that I'm down to 4. Well, I'm losing some little bits on that side, but that's okay. And 5 1/4 down from 6, I need to take off 3/4 of an inch. I'm going to do 1/2 inch off the bottom. and then 1/4 inch off the top. And you guys work your measurements however it fits for you and how your artwork turned out. So it looks pretty good. And let's do the other one. Whoops, I'm stuck on my tape. So this is 5. I want it down to 4, but I kind of want to keep some of this stuff. So I think let's see what happens if I go down to 4 1/4 on this side. How much am I losing? Not too much. Let's split the difference here. And down to 4. And with this one, the top seems to have more blank space. So I'm going to do that. Down to 5 1/4. All right. And see how just trimming that down does not affect our artwork whatsoever. So I'm going to take these guys. I am going to ink up my sentiment with my nice black ink. And my glass mat is a little bit rocky, so I need to make sure that this is right in the middle. So I can tell by my hearts, this is the one I wanted the sentiment in the bottom. Beautiful. This is the one where I wanted the sentiment in the top. Ta-da! I'll clean that off later. And what am I going to do? Today is a good day, I think is going to be my sentiment on this. So with the really delicate little sentiments, you don't want to press too hard. I'm just going to tuck it right under the today. And over here. Beautiful. Love it, love it, love it. So you can stop there, or we could add a little bit more. I'm going to go back to my wilted violet and just put a little bit out on my palette here. I'm going to get my big paintbrush again. Make sure it's not too wet. I'm going to mix it in with that purple here. A little bit more water. And then you can add some paint splatters. And all I'm going to do is put my finger out and I'm going to tap my brush so that you get those really fun little paint splatters on top, just as a finishing touch. Switch over to the other one. Gives it a little bit more of that kind of funky look. All right, clean up my mess. So splatter technique goes everywhere. So just make sure you've given yourself some good clearance. Now, the other thing I'm going to try, and I don't know if it's going to work, is I brought a Wink of Stella brush. And in theory, that same splatter technique should work if you've got enough kind of ink in your barrel. So I've just got, you know, a good smoosh. Yeah. So now I'm getting just that little splatter of sparkle as well. Oh, that works so beautifully. You can see how we've got the purple splatters and the gold splatters. So to finish up, and see, even on this one, I even got it on the sentiment, but that's okay. That's kind of fun. Oh, I'm glad that worked.
What's the name of that second?
All right, so let's give it just a second to dry. And then what I would do is simply put it onto my card base. Now, like I said, I cut this a little bit smaller. Even if I'm putting this on a white card base, I'm okay with that because probably what I would do is I would put this on foam tape just to raise it up. The other thing you can do, and I didn't bring it with me, but if I had my black journaling pen, I may do like a nice doodle outline. I wonder if I have one in my bag here. What's in my bag of tricks?
Sheri, what's the name of that spritzy, sparkly one you used?
Oh, here is a black jelly roll. Let's make sure it still works. Yep, good. So you could, sometimes what I do is I do little dash marks to make stitching, but that to me feels a little bit too reined in for a watercolor. So I may just really freehand draw a border. And the object of this is to not be perfect, so don't get your ruler out. But look at how that just finishes the edges. And maybe you do some little dot doodles. Now I'm just having fun. You can just keep adding elements and elements to this. So that will help frame it when you go to put it on your card base. The other thing I may do, instead of putting it on the white, is cut a piece of black cardstock and just mat that with this. Lastly, if you wanted, you could add some sequins and gems just to finish it off. So how much fun was that, ladies? I hope you had a fantastic, fantastic time and learned something new about watercolor. I'm seeing that maybe my volume was down. Do people have questions? Feel free to unmute yourself if you have a quick question. Otherwise, I am going to stop the recording and thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks, Sheri.